Sarah Chen woke up with a groan. Her back hurt again. 6 months on the Carthax ship, and her body still had not gotten used to the gravity. Everything felt heavier here. Even lifting her arm took more effort than it should. She sat up slowly in her sleeping quarters. The room was dark and cold, just the way the Carthax liked it. They were a species that reminded Sarah of giant cats that walked on 2 legs. They had fur, sharp teeth, and claws that could tear through metal. Their entire culture was built around being warriors and hunters. Sarah was the only human on the ship called Crimson Fang. She was here as a scientist and cultural liaison. Her job was to help humans and Carthax understand each other better. It sounded simple when she accepted the mission. Now, 6 months later, she wondered if she had made a mistake. The Carthax were not cruel to her. They just did not understand her. To them, humans looked weak and soft. They could not figure out how humans had made it to space when they seemed so fragile. Sarah heard them whispering about it. Some thought humans must have very good technology to make up for their weak bodies. Others thought humans must be smarter than they looked. Sarah stood up and felt her lower back protest. The pain shot up her spine. She needed to stretch. Back on Earth, she did yoga every morning. Here on the ship, she had been too self-conscious to do it. She did not want the Carthax to see her and think she was even weaker than they already believed. But today, the pain was too much. She needed to move and stretch her body. Sarah checked the time. It was very early, during the ship's night cycle. Most of the Carthax would be sleeping. She grabbed her water bottle and left her quarters. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold metal floor. She walked through the quiet corridors toward the observation deck. It was her favorite place on the ship. One entire wall was made of transparent material that showed the stars outside. Sarah often came here when she felt homesick. The observation deck was empty when she arrived. Perfect. Sarah set down her water bottle and stood in the center of the room. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then another. She felt her body start to relax just a little bit. Sarah began with simple movements. She raised her arms above her head and stretched tall. Then she bent forward, letting her hands hang toward the floor. Her tight back muscles complained, but she breathed through it. Slowly, the tension started to ease. She moved into a sun salutation, flowing from one position to the next. Down to the floor, chest forward, then pushing back with her hips high in the air. The downward dog position always felt good. She held it, feeling the stretch in her legs and back. What Sarah did not know was that she was not alone. In the ventilation shaft above the observation deck, 8 young Carthax were watching her. They were cubs, which meant they were teenagers in human terms. They ranged from 13 to 16 years old. They were all training to become warriors. The cubs had been curious about the human for weeks. They watched her whenever they could. She was so different from everything they knew. She moved carefully and spoke softly. She did not growl or show her teeth. She seemed almost afraid of them sometimes. "What is she doing?" whispered Kresh, a female cub with dark gray fur. "Some kind of stretching?" answered Drak. He was the son of the ship's war master, the highest-ranking warrior on board. Drak had golden-brown fur and green eyes that watched Sarah with intense interest. "Why would she stretch like that?" asked another cub named Torvik. "It looks strange." Sarah moved into warrior pose, one leg forward and bent, the other straight behind her. Her arms stretched out to both sides. She held the position, breathing steadily. "She looks like she is preparing to fight," Drak said slowly. "But also not fighting. It is strange." "Maybe this is how humans train," suggested Kresh. "Maybe this is why they are so weak. They do weird stretches instead of real combat practice." But Drak was not so sure. He watched the way Sarah moved. There was something controlled about it, something purposeful. She was not just stretching randomly. Each movement flowed into the next one. And her face looked calm, almost peaceful. Jrak had been having problems lately. His shoulders were always tight and sore. His combat instructor said he was too tense. His muscles were so tight that they slowed him down. He had tried everything, but nothing helped. Watching Sarah, he wondered if those strange movements might actually do something. Sarah continued her routine, unaware of her audience. She moved into tree pose, standing on one leg with the other foot pressed against her inner thigh. Her hands came together in front of her chest. She swayed slightly, finding her balance in the higher gravity. "She is standing on one leg," Torvik whispered. "Why?" "Balance training," Jrak said. It was something they did in warrior training too, but not like this. Not so slowly and calmly. Sarah held the position for a long moment, then slowly lowered her leg. She moved into a seated position on the floor and bent forward over her straight legs. The cubs could see the stretch in her back and legs. "Her body is very flexible," Kresh observed. "More flexible than ours." That was true. The Carthax were strong and fast, but they were not very flexible. Their muscles were dense and powerful, built for explosive movement and strength. But that came with a cost. They were often stiff and sore after training. Sarah finished her routine with a final resting pose. She lay on her back on the floor, arms at her sides, completely still. She breathed slowly and deeply. After a few minutes, she sat up, looking more relaxed than the cubs had ever seen her. She picked up her water bottle and took a long drink. Then she stood and walked out of the observation deck, heading back to her quarters. In the ventilation shaft, the cubs looked at each other. "That was very strange," Torvik said. "Yes," agreed Kresh. "Very strange." But Jrak was quiet. He was thinking about his sore shoulders. He was thinking about how calm and controlled Sarah had looked. He was thinking that maybe, just maybe, there was something to those strange movements. "I want to try it," he said suddenly. The other cubs stared at him. "Try what?" asked Kresh. "Those movements. That stretching. I want to try it." "Why?" Torvik looked confused. "We are warriors. We do not need to stretch like prey animals." "My shoulders hurt all the time," Jrak said. "What if this helps? What if this is some kind of human training technique?" Kresh tilted her head, thinking. "I have been failing the flexibility tests," she admitted. "My instructor says I am too stiff." "Maybe. This is foolish," Torvik said, but even he sounded uncertain. Jrak made a decision. "Tomorrow morning, same time, we meet here. We try the movements. If it does nothing, we stop. But we try." The cubs agreed, though some were more reluctant than others. They climbed out of the ventilation shaft and went back to their sleeping quarters. None of them noticed that they had been making more noise than they thought. None of them saw the adult Carthax warrior who had been passing by the observation deck. Instructor Varkoth had heard the cubs whispering in the shaft. He had heard Jrak's plan, and Varkoth did not like it one bit. The next morning, 8 nervous cubs gathered in the observation deck before dawn. They had never done anything like this before. Sneaking around felt wrong. Copying movements from the soft human felt even more wrong. But they were curious, and some of them, like Jrak and Kresh, were desperate. Standard training was not working for them. Maybe this strange human practice would help. "She started by standing very still," Jrak said. He tried to remember everything Sarah had done. Then she raised her arms up high. The cubs spread out across the observation deck. They raised their arms above their heads. Their claws extended automatically, a defensive reflex. They looked at each other and felt ridiculous. "Now what?" asked Torvik. "She bent forward," Kresh said. "Like this." She bent at the waist, trying to touch the floor. Her hands came nowhere close. Her muscles were too tight. She grunted with effort. "This is stupid," Torvik muttered. but he tried it anyway. They attempted to copy the movements they had seen. Most of it was clumsy and awkward. Their bodies did not move the way Sarah's did. They were built differently, but they tried. Zrak moved into the position where Sarah had pushed her hips high in the air with her hands and feet on the floor. He felt an immediate stretch in his shoulders. The tight muscles that always hurt suddenly pulled in a new way. It was uncomfortable, but also good. He held the position, breathing hard. "This one," he said to the others. "This one does something." Kresh tried it. Her back cracked loudly, making her yelp. But afterward she felt looser than she had in weeks. They practiced for 30 minutes, trying to remember and copy everything Sarah had done. Then they heard footsteps approaching. They scattered quickly, climbing back into the ventilation shaft, just as an adult warrior walked past. The cubs went to their regular training that day. Zrak noticed something during combat practice. His shoulders felt different. They still hurt, but less than usual. His movements were slightly smoother. It was not much, but it was something. Kresh had the same experience during agility training. She had been failing the flexibility tests for months. Her body was too stiff to bend the way the test required. But today, she managed to bend just a little bit further. Still not enough to pass, but closer than before. That night, they met again in the observation deck. And the next night. And the next. By the end of the first week, Sarah noticed something odd. She saw cubs watching her more than usual. They followed her with their eyes in the dining hall. They found reasons to walk past her in the corridors. It made her nervous at first, but they did not seem hostile, just interested. By the end of the second week, Zrak's combat scores improved. Not dramatically, but enough that his instructor noticed. His shoulders were looser. He could move his arms through a wider range of motion. His attacks were faster and more fluid. Kresh finally passed her flexibility test. Her instructor was so surprised that he made her do it 3 more times to prove it was not a mistake. The cubs were excited. The strange human stretches actually worked. They started calling them warrior preparations to make it sound more acceptable. They invited more cubs to join their secret morning sessions. Soon, there were 15 young Karthaks practicing yoga in the observation deck every morning. But secrets do not stay secret forever. Instructor Varkoth had been watching. He had noticed the cubs sneaking around. He had noticed their improving scores. And he had seen them copying the humans' strange movements. Varkoth was old-fashioned. He believed in traditional Karthaks warrior training. Pain was good. Suffering built character. Real warriors did not need to stretch and breathe slowly. They needed to fight and train hard. The humans' soft ways had no place in warrior culture. One morning, Varkoth waited outside the observation deck. When the cubs emerged after their practice session, he was standing there with his arms crossed. His face showed his anger. "What were you doing in there?" he demanded. The cubs froze. Zrak stepped forward. As the War Master's son, he felt responsible. "We were training, instructor," he said carefully. "Training?" Varkoth's voice was cold. "That was not training. That was copying prey animal behavior. That was abandoning our warrior traditions for weak species movements." "But our scores have improved," Kresh said quietly. "The movements help us." "Silence," Varkoth roared. "You will not speak unless given permission. You cubs have been corrupted. You have been polluted by human weakness. This ends now. All of you report to your instructors. You will tell them what you have been doing. You will be punished appropriately." The cubs' hearts sank. They had known this might happen. But they had hoped they could keep their secret longer. "And as for the human," Varkoth continued, "she will answer for this corruption of our youth. I am reporting this to War Master Thraxil immediately." Zrak felt his stomach drop. His father. The War Master would be furious. 3 hours later, Sarah was summoned to the War Master's office. She had no idea why. She entered the large, cold room nervously. War Master Thraxil sat behind a massive desk made of dark metal. He was huge, even for a Carthax. His fur was dark gray with silver streaks. His eyes were ice blue and very cold. Instructor Varkoth stood to one side, looking satisfied. "Dr. Chen," the War Master said. His voice was deep and controlled. "You have been teaching our cubs your human practices." Sarah blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry." "What?" "Do not pretend ignorance," Varkoth snapped. "The cubs have confessed. They have been copying your morning stretching routine for weeks. You have corrupted them with your weak ways." Understanding dawned on Sarah. The cubs had been watching her. They had been copying her yoga practice. She did not know whether to feel flattered or worried. "I did not teach them anything," Sarah said carefully. "I did not even know they were watching me." "Yet you performed these actions where they could observe," Varkoth said. "You tempted them with your soft practices. You have damaged their warrior training." "Actually," Jrak's voice came from the doorway. He entered without permission, which was extremely bold. "She did not tempt us. We watched her in secret. We chose to try the movements ourselves. And they helped us." "Jrak!" Thraxil stood up. "You dare enter without being called?" "Father, please listen. My combat scores improved by 15%. Kresh passed her flexibility test after failing for months. We are better warriors because of these practices, not worse." "That is impossible," Varkoth said flatly. "Prey animal movements cannot improve warrior training." Sarah suddenly found her voice. "With respect, instructor, these are not prey animal movements. They are thousands of years old human practices designed to improve strength, flexibility, balance, and body control. Athletes on Earth have used them for generations." "Humans are not warriors," Varkoth said dismissively. "No," Sarah agreed. "We are not like you. We do not have your natural strength or speed. But we survived on a death world and made it to the stars. We did that by being smart about how we train our bodies, by working with our bodies instead of just pushing them until they break." "You admit your weakness," Varkoth said. "I admit our difference," Sarah corrected. "And maybe, just maybe, our difference could help you. Not replace your traditions, not make you weak. Just add another tool to your training methods." Thraxil was silent. He looked at his son. Jrak stood straight and tall, meeting his father's eyes. The young cub was not backing down. "You truly believe these practices helped you?" Thraxil asked his son. "Yes, father. They did." The War Master thought for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Very well. We will test this properly. Dr. Chen, you will officially teach your practices to the cubs who have been following them for 2 weeks. At the end of that time, we will conduct full combat trials. We will compare their performance to cubs who continued traditional training only. If your methods show real improvement, we will consider them. If not, you will stop immediately and never speak of this again." Sarah swallowed hard. "Agreed." "And if her methods fail?" Varkoth asked. "Then the cubs will be disciplined for wasting time on foolishness," Thraxil said coldly. "And the human will admit her practices have no value for warriors." It was not a perfect solution, but it was a chance. Sarah nodded. "I will do my best," she said. As she left the War Master's office, Jrak followed her. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for defending us." "Thank you for defending me," Sarah replied. "But now we have to prove this actually works. No pressure, right?" Jrak showed his teeth in what she had learned was a Carthax smile. "No pressure at all. Only our entire future as warriors." Sarah laughed, but it sounded nervous even to her own ears. What had she just agreed to? The first official training session was scheduled for the next morning. Sarah barely slept that night. She kept thinking about what to teach and how to explain it. The cubs were not humans. Their bodies were different. What if what worked for her did not work for them? When she arrived at the observation deck, 15 cubs were waiting. They looked nervous but determined. Zrak stood at the front of the group. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said. She felt strange being so formal. "I know this is unusual for you. It is unusual for me, too. But let us try to learn from each other, okay?" The cubs nodded. Some looked more confident than others. "First, I need you to understand what we are doing and why," Sarah said. "This practice is called yoga. It is very old. Humans developed it to make their bodies stronger, more flexible, and more balanced. It also helps the mind stay calm and focused." "How can stretching make you stronger?" asked a cub named Reth. He was one of the largest cubs, built for power. "Good question," Sarah said. "Stretching does not build muscle the same way lifting weights does. But it does something else important. It makes your muscles work better. Think of your muscles like ship cables. If the cables are too tight, they might snap under stress. If they are too loose, they do not work properly. You need the right balance. Flexibility makes you faster and helps prevent injuries." She could see some cubs thinking about this. Others still looked skeptical. "And balance?" asked Kresh. "We train balance already." "Yes, but this is different," Sarah explained. "This is about knowing exactly where your body is in space, about feeling every muscle and joint. When you fight, you react without thinking, right? This training makes those reactions better. Your body learns to move more efficiently." "Show us," Zrak said. Sarah began with the basics. She taught them how to stand properly, with weight distributed evenly. She taught them how to breathe deeply, filling their lungs completely. Many cubs breathed too shallowly, especially when nervous or stressed. "Breathing is important," Sarah explained. "When you breathe deeply, your body gets more oxygen. More oxygen means more energy and clearer thinking. In combat, proper breathing can be the difference between winning and losing." She moved on to simple stretches, forward bends, side stretches, and gentle twists. The cubs followed along. Some were more flexible than others. All of them were stiffer than Sarah, but that was expected. Then she taught them downward dog, the position that had helped Zrak so much. She showed them how to place their hands and feet, how to push their hips up and back, how to keep their spine straight. "This stretches your entire back, your shoulders, your legs," she explained. "Hold it for 5 breaths. Breathe slowly and deeply." The cubs tried. Most of them shook with effort. Their muscles were not used to this kind of sustained stretch. But Sarah could see them working, really trying. "Good," she encouraged. "Do not worry if it is hard. It will get easier with practice. Your bodies are learning." Next came warrior pose. Sarah demonstrated, stepping one leg forward and bending it while keeping the back leg straight. Her arms stretched out to the sides, strong and steady. "This builds leg strength and balance," she said. "It also opens your hips and chest. In combat, you need strong legs and good hip mobility. This helps both." The cubs moved into the position. They were naturally good at this one. Their strong legs held the pose easily. But Sarah noticed many of them leaned too far forward or let their back leg bend. "Keep your back leg straight," she corrected gently. "Push through your back heel. Feel the stretch. Yes, like that, Kresh." "Good." They practiced for an hour. Sarah introduced them to tree pose for balance, child's pose for rest, and several other basic positions. By the end, all the cubs were tired but energized in a strange new way. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. "Sore," Reth admitted. "But good sore, different from combat training sore." "My back feels longer," Kresh said, which made Sarah smile. That was exactly how yoga should feel. "We will practice every morning," Sarah told them. "Some days will be harder than others. Some days you will not want to come. Come anyway. Consistency is important." Over the next week, Sarah taught them more. She learned to adapt the poses for their different bodies. Karthak's legs bent differently than human legs. Their spines were slightly more rigid. But their shoulders had an amazing range of motion that humans did not have. Sarah created modified versions of poses that worked better for them. She also taught them the philosophy behind the practice. A warrior must know their body completely, she told them. You cannot fight well if you do not understand how you move, where you are strong, where you are weak. This practice teaches you that awareness. The cubs absorbed everything. They asked questions constantly. They wanted to understand not just what to do, but why. Sarah had never had such engaged students, but not everyone was happy about the training. Outside the observation deck, other cubs and even adult warriors watched with disapproval. They muttered that this was wrong, that it was abandoning tradition, that the human was making warriors weak. Instructor Varkoth watched every session from a distance. His face showed his disgust. He was waiting for the cubs to fail, for this foolish experiment to end. But something else was happening too. Some of the older warriors began watching with interest instead of mockery. These were the warriors who had served for many years. Their bodies were covered in scars from combat and training. They moved stiffly, clearly in pain. One of them was Commander Skeleth, second in command of the ship's military forces. She was 40 years old, which was middle-aged for a Karthax. She had been a legendary fighter in her youth. Now her left shoulder barely moved. An old injury had never healed properly. She could still fight, but not like before. Skeleth watched as Sarah helped a cub named Horvath with a shoulder stretch. The cub had been complaining about tight shoulders, just like Zrak had. Sarah showed him how to gently pull his arm across his chest, holding the stretch for several breaths. When Horvath released the stretch, he moved his arm in circles. His face showed surprise. "It moves easier," he said. Skeleth touched her own injured shoulder without thinking. Could these human practices help old injuries too? She was too proud to ask, but she kept watching. Inside the training sessions, Sarah noticed the cubs were bonding over their shared experience. They encouraged each other. When Reth struggled with tree pose, falling over repeatedly, Kresh and Zrak cheered for him until he finally held it for 10 seconds. When little Mara, the youngest cub, could not reach her toes in a forward bend, the others assured her she would improve with time. "This is something I did not expect," Sarah told them during one session. "In my experience, warriors often compete against each other. They want to be the strongest, the fastest, the best. But you are all helping each other. Why?" Zrak thought about it. "Because we are all trying something new together, something difficult. We know what it feels like to struggle with these movements, so we help." Sarah smiled. "That is very wise. And it is one of the best things about practices like this. They teach compassion along with strength." "Warriors do not need compassion," a harsh voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Instructor Varkoth stood there, looking at them with cold eyes. "Warriors need discipline, strength, aggression, not this soft foolishness." "With respect, instructor," Sarah said carefully. "Compassion and strength are not opposites. They can exist together." "Human philosophy," Varkoth said dismissively. "It does not belong in warrior training." "Then why are my combat scores still improving?" Zrak asked. His voice was respectful but firm. "Why did Kresh pass her agility test? Why is Reth moving faster in drills?" "Coincidence," Varkoth said flatly. "Or you are simply maturing. It has nothing to do with these stretches. We will see the truth during the trials tomorrow. When you face real combat tests, this foolishness will show itself for what it is." He left, his words hanging in the air like a threat. The cubs looked worried. Tomorrow was the big test. They would compete against cubs who had continued traditional training only. Their performance would determine everything. "What if we fail?" Mara asked quietly. Sarah looked at the young cub. "Then we fail. But I do not think you will." You have all worked so hard. You have all improved. Trust in yourselves. Trust in what you have learned. And trust in the humans' teachings, Zrak added. She has not steered us wrong yet. That night, Sarah could not sleep again. But this time it was not from nerves. It was from hope. She had seen the cubs transform over 2 weeks. They moved better. They breathed better. They seemed more confident and more connected to their own bodies. But would it be enough to convince the War Master and the other warriors? Would numbers and test scores prove what Sarah could see with her own eyes? Tomorrow, they would find out. The combat trial arena was filled with warriors. It seemed like half the ship had come to watch. Word had spread about the unusual test. Everyone wanted to see if the humans' strange practices would prove useful or if the cubs would embarrass themselves. Sarah stood at the side of the arena with her 15 cubs. They looked nervous. Across the arena, another group of 15 cubs waited. These cubs had continued their traditional training without any yoga. They looked confident, some even smug. War Master Thraxil stood on a raised platform overlooking the arena. Beside him sat Dr. Scareth, the ship's chief medical officer. She had monitoring equipment set up to track various measurements during the tests. The trial will proceed in 4 phases, Thraxil announced. His voice carried across the entire arena. Phase 1, agility course. Phase 2, endurance test. Phase 3, individual combat. Phase 4, tactical simulation. Dr. Scareth will monitor all participants for injuries, fatigue, and performance metrics. Sarah's heart pounded. This was it. The agility course went first. It was a nightmare of obstacles, jumps, balance beams, and tight spaces. Cubs had to move through it as quickly as possible without making errors. The traditional group went first. They were fast and strong. They powered through obstacles with pure force. But Sarah noticed something. They were not very flexible. When they had to squeeze through tight spaces, they struggled. When they had to make quick direction changes, they were stiff. Then Sarah's group took their turn. Kresh went first. She approached the course differently. She flowed through it, bending and twisting where the others had forced their way through. Her flexibility allowed her to move through tight spaces easily. Her balance, improved by tree pose practice, kept her steady on the narrow beams. Her time was 3 seconds faster than the best time from the traditional group. The crowd murmured in surprise. Zrak went next. His improved shoulder mobility let him pull himself over obstacles more efficiently. His breathing stayed calm and controlled, even when moving fast. He beat his previous record by 5 seconds. One by one, Sarah's cubs completed the course. Not all of them were faster than the traditional group, but 12 out of 15 showed improvements over their previous times, and they moved with a grace that had not been there before. Dr. Scareth was recording everything, her eyes on her monitors. The endurance test came next. The cubs had to run, climb, and perform combat movements continuously for 20 minutes without stopping. It was designed to test both physical stamina and mental toughness. The traditional group started strong. Their raw power was impressive. But as the minutes passed, Sarah saw them starting to struggle. Their breathing became ragged and uncontrolled. They were burning through their energy too fast. Sarah's group approached it differently. They breathed deeply and steadily, just as she had taught them. They paced themselves. When they felt tired, they focused on their breath, using it to find energy. By minute 15, the difference was clear. The traditional group was exhausted. Several cubs were moving slowly, their form falling apart. But Sarah's group, while tired, was still moving with control and purpose. The yoga cubs are showing better breathing patterns, Dr. Scareth announced, reading from her monitors. Their heart rates are elevated but more stable. They are using oxygen more efficiently. Instructor Varkoth's face grew darker. This was not going the way he expected. The individual combat phase was next. Cubs were paired against each other randomly. It was not full contact, but they wore sensors that recorded hits and defensive moves. Zrak was paired against a cub named Grath, from the traditional group. Grath was bigger and stronger. In the past, Jirac had lost to him every time. The match began. Grath charged forward aggressively, just as expected, but Jirac moved differently now. His improved flexibility let him bend and twist in ways he could not before. When Grath threw a punch, Jirac leaned back at an angle that should have been impossible, letting it pass by his face. Then Jirac countered, his movements fluid and controlled. His balance was perfect. The tree pose practice had taught him how to hold steady even in difficult positions. The match lasted 2 minutes. Jirac won, landing 3 times as many hits as Grath. The crowd was silent with shock. More matches followed. Not every yoga cub won, but they all fought differently. They were more flexible, more balanced, more controlled. Even when they lost, they moved better than before. "Interesting," War Master Thraxil said quietly. Even he could not hide his surprise. Reth faced a cub named Darkus, who was known for his speed. Reth was strong, but had always been too slow to compete with faster opponents. But his yoga practice had improved his flexibility, which made him faster. When Darkus tried to circle around him, Reth twisted smoothly to follow, his hips and spine moving in ways they could not 2 weeks ago. He managed to grab Darkus and pin him, something no one expected. The final phase was a tactical simulation. Both groups had to work together to complete a mission that required teamwork, strategy, and physical skill. They had to infiltrate a mock enemy position, which meant climbing, sneaking, and coordinating their movements. Sarah's group moved like water. They had learned through yoga to be aware of their own bodies, but they had also learned to be aware of each other. They communicated with small gestures. They helped each other over obstacles. When one cub struggled, others adjusted their positions to compensate. The traditional group was more chaotic. Everyone wanted to be the hero. They got in each other's way. Their coordination was poor. Sarah's group completed the mission in 12 minutes. The traditional group took 18 minutes and made several critical errors that would have resulted in mission failure in a real scenario. When all 4 phases were complete, Dr. Scareth stood up with her results. "The data is clear," she announced. The group that practiced yoga showed the following improvements compared to their baseline scores from 2 weeks ago. 23% fewer minor injuries during testing. 15% improvement in flexibility measurements, 18% better breathing efficiency during endurance tests, 12% faster recovery times between exercises, and significantly improved focus and coordination scores. She paused, looking at her screens. Additionally, when compared directly against the traditional training group, the yoga group showed advantages in flexibility, balance, breathing control, and teamwork. The traditional group maintained advantages in raw strength measurements, but the gap was smaller than expected. The arena was silent. Everyone was absorbing the information. "There is one more observation," Dr. Scareth continued. "The yoga group reported significantly less pain and stiffness after testing compared to the traditional group. This suggests better recovery and lower risk of chronic injuries." Instructor Varkoth stood up. "This proves nothing. Combat is not about flexibility and breathing. It is about strength and aggression." "Then explain why my son defeated Grath," War Master Thraxil said quietly. "Grath is stronger. By your logic, he should have won easily." Varkoth had no answer. Thraxil stood and walked down to the arena floor. He approached Sarah's group of cubs. They stood at attention, nervous but proud. "You have done well," he told them. Then he turned to Sarah. "Dr. Chen, your practices have shown measurable results. I was skeptical. I admit this openly." He looked at Instructor Varkoth. "Change is difficult for warriors. We value our traditions, but a true warrior uses every tool available to improve. To reject something useful because it is different is not strength. It is foolishness." Thraxil addressed the entire arena. "Effective immediately, These yoga practices will be offered as optional training for all warriors who wish to try them. Dr. Chen will continue to teach. Those who benefit will continue. Those who do not may stop. But we will not dismiss something useful simply because it comes from another species. The crowd murmured. Some warriors looked interested. Others looked skeptical. But no one could argue with the test results. Then something unexpected happened. Instructor Varkoth stepped forward. His face was tight with emotion. "I request to learn these practices," he said stiffly. Everyone stared. Varkoth, who had opposed this from the beginning. "I have old injuries," Varkoth admitted quietly. "My back, my knees, they hurt every day. I saw how the cubs moved, how they recovered faster. If these practices can help me—" He trailed off, his pride clearly warring with his pain. Sarah felt a surge of compassion. "Of course, instructor. Anyone who wants to learn is welcome." Varkoth nodded stiffly and stepped back. Then Commander Skelleth came forward. "I also wish to learn. My shoulder has not moved properly in 5 years. If there is any chance—" "Yes," Sarah said warmly. "Yes, I will teach you." One by one, more warriors stepped forward, young cubs and old veterans, warriors with injuries and warriors who just wanted to improve. Within minutes, Sarah had more than 50 students. She looked at Jirak and her original group of cubs. They were grinning, showing their teeth in Karthak's smiles. They had started this. They had been brave enough to try something new. "Looks like we need a bigger training space," Sarah said. War Master Thraxil actually smiled, which was rare. "I believe that can be arranged." As the crowd dispersed, Sarah felt overwhelming relief and joy. They had done it. They had proven that different did not mean weak. That human practices could help alien warriors. That there was value in sharing knowledge across species. The cubs surrounded her, all talking at once, excited and proud. Sarah laughed and tried to answer their questions. For the first time since arriving on the Crimson Fang, she truly felt welcome. This was what humanity brought to the stars. Not weapons or conquest, but the willingness to share, to teach, to learn together. And sometimes, the simple gift of showing others how to move without pain. 3 months had passed since the combat trials. The Crimson Fang was transformed. Every morning at dawn, warriors filled the largest hangar bay for yoga practice. What had started with 8 curious cubs now included hundreds of Karthaks. Sarah stood at the front of the massive space, leading the session. Her voice echoed across the hangar through the ship's speaker system. "Breathe in deeply. Fill your lungs completely. Breathe out slowly. Let tension flow out of your body." 300 Karthaks warriors moved together. They stood in warrior pose, legs strong, arms stretched wide. It was a sight Sarah never imagined she would see. Predator warriors, each capable of tearing through metal with their claws, moving with gentle precision through poses designed for peace and balance. Among them was War Master Thraxil himself. He practiced in the front row every morning. His presence there sent a clear message to everyone. This was not weakness. This was strength of a different kind. Beside him, Instructor Varkoth moved through the poses with focused intensity. His back pain had improved dramatically over 3 months. He could now move without the constant ache that had plagued him for years. He would never admit it publicly, but he had privately thanked Sarah twice. For Varkoth, that was practically a declaration of love. Commander Skelleth practiced nearby. Her injured shoulder had regained about 60% of its mobility. She would never be what she was in her youth, but she could fight properly again. The doctors had said it was impossible. Sarah's practices had proven them wrong. The cubs who had started everything trained together in one section. They were the experts now, the ones who had been doing this the longest. Other cubs came to them for advice. Jirak had become an unofficial assistant instructor, helping newer students with difficult poses. Move into downward dog, Sarah called out. Hands flat on the floor, hips high in the air. Push back through your heels. Feel the stretch in your shoulders and back. The warriors moved into position. Some were graceful, others still struggled, but everyone tried. The hangar was silent except for the sound of breathing. Sarah walked between the rows, offering corrections and encouragement. She had learned all their names. She knew their specific challenges and injuries. She adapted poses for each individual's needs. When she passed Instructor Varkoth, she noticed his form had improved significantly. "Good, Instructor. Your back is much straighter than last week." Varkoth grunted acknowledgement. He still was not comfortable with compliments, but he appreciated them. The morning session ended with final relaxation. Everyone lay on their backs on the floor, completely still. The hangar was filled with massive predator warriors lying peacefully, breathing deeply. "Notice how your body feels," Sarah said softly. "Notice the difference between when we started and now. This is what proper care of your body feels like. Carry this awareness with you through your day." After a few minutes of silence, she released them. "Thank you all for your practice today. You are dismissed." The warriors rose and dispersed to their various duties. But many of them stopped to thank Sarah or to ask questions. She answered each one patiently. Zrak approached with his group of original cubs. They looked proud and happy. "Sarah," Kresh said, "we have something to tell you." "What is it?" "The War Master is recommending your practices to the entire Carthax fleet," Zrak explained. "All ships, all military installations. They want you to train instructors who can teach others." Sarah's eyes widened. "The entire fleet? That's thousands of warriors." "Tens of thousands," Zrak corrected with a toothy grin. "You have started something big, Sarah, very big." Sarah felt overwhelmed. She had just wanted to stretch her sore back. Now she was changing an entire species approach to warrior training. "I am not sure I can do that," she admitted. "That is so much responsibility." "You do not have to do it alone," a deep voice said. War Master Thraxil approached. "We will provide you with everything you need. Assistance, resources, time. The Carthax respect results, Dr. Chen. You have shown results." He paused, then continued more quietly. "You have also shown us something else. You have shown us that strength comes in many forms. That we can learn from those who are different from us. This is valuable beyond just the physical benefits." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you, War Master. That means a great deal." "My son tells me you humans have a saying, 'A rising tide lifts all boats.'" I did not understand it at first. Now I do. You have lifted us all, Dr. Chen, and we are grateful. Later that day, Sarah found herself in the observation deck where this had all begun. She stood alone, looking out at the stars. She thought about her journey. 6 months ago, she had felt so isolated and misunderstood on this ship. Now she had friends, students, a purpose. The door opened behind her. She turned to see Commander Skelleth entering. "May I join you?" the older warrior asked. "Of course, Commander." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the stars. "I wanted to tell you something," Skelleth said. "When I was young, I was the best fighter on my homeworld. Fast, strong, unbeatable. Then I was injured in combat. My shoulder was damaged. I could still fight, but not like before. I thought my best days were behind me." She rotated her shoulder, moving it through its now improved range of motion. "You gave me something back that I thought was lost forever. Not my youth. I cannot have that back. But the ability to move without constant pain. The ability to fight properly again. You gave me that." Sarah smiled. "I am glad I could help." "You did more than help," Skelleth said. "You taught us that healing is not weakness, that taking care of our bodies is part of being warriors, not a contradiction to it." My generation grew up believing that pain was something to endure, not something to fix. You changed that." "The Cubs changed it," Sarah corrected. "They were brave enough to try something new. I just showed them how." Skelleth showed her teeth in a smile. "You are too modest, human. But I will accept your words." She turned to leave, then paused. "There is a saying among my people. The greatest warriors are those who teach warriors." "You have earned that title, Sarah Chen." After Skelleth left, Sarah stayed in the observation deck a while longer. She thought about what had happened, how 8 curious cubs had changed an entire ship's culture, how sharing something as simple as morning stretches had built bridges between species. The door opened again. This time, all 15 of her original cubs poured in, laughing and talking. "We thought we would find you here," Drak said. "This is where it all started. The place where we first saw you do the strange human stretches," Kresh added with amusement. "You thought they were strange?" Sarah asked with mock offense. "We thought they were very strange," Reth admitted. "We thought you looked foolish. And now we know you looked foolish," Torvik said, then quickly added, "but in a good way. In a smart way." The cubs laughed. Sarah laughed with them. "We wanted to thank you," Drak said more seriously. "You gave us something important, not just better combat scores. You gave us confidence. You taught us it is okay to try new things even if others mock us. You taught us to think for ourselves." "You taught us those things yourselves," Sarah said. "I just showed you some poses." "You were the ones brave enough to try them despite what everyone said. You were the ones who kept practicing when others called you weak. You did that. I am proud of you." The cubs beamed at her praise. Then little Mara spoke up shyly. "Will you keep teaching us, even when you are teaching everyone else?" "Always," Sarah promised. "You are my original students. We will always have our group practice, just us." "Good," Mara said, satisfied. They spent the next hour in the observation deck, talking and joking. The cubs told Sarah about their lives, their families, their dreams. Sarah shared stories about Earth, about human culture, about her own journey to the stars. As the conversation flowed, Sarah realized something. She had come to this ship as a cultural liaison. Her job was to help humans and Carthax understand each other. She thought she would do that through formal meetings and diplomatic discussions. Instead, she had done it through stretching, through breathing, through showing that vulnerability and seeking help were not weaknesses but wisdom. She had done it by being herself, practicing her morning yoga, and allowing curious cubs to watch. Sometimes the smallest actions created the biggest changes. A week later, Sarah stood in the hangar again, but this time she was not teaching the whole group. She was teaching 15 Carthax warriors who would become instructors themselves. These 15 would return to their own ships and teach others. Those others would teach more. The knowledge would spread across the entire fleet. Among the 15 were 3 of her original cubs, Drak, Kresh, and Reth. They had progressed so much that they were ready to teach. Sarah felt like a proud parent. "Remember," she told the group, "yoga is not just about the poses. It is about respect for the body. It is about patience. It is about understanding that improvement takes time. Teach your students these things, along with the physical movements." The 15 instructors nodded, absorbing every word. "And remember," Sarah added, "you can adapt the practices. Make them work for your students. Add Carthax names to the poses if that helps. Integrate them with your existing training. This is not about replacing your culture. It is about adding to it." Over the following months, reports came back from across the fleet. Injury rates dropped. Combat performance improved. Warrior satisfaction increased. But more than that, something cultural was shifting. Warriors were learning to value wisdom alongside strength, to seek help rather than suffering in silence, to respect different approaches rather than mocking them. A year after Sarah first did yoga in the observation deck, she received a communication from Earth. It was from the Human-Alien Relations Council. They had heard about her success. Other alien species were asking if humans could teach them similar practices. Sarah found herself appointed as humanity's first wellness ambassador to alien species. It was a new position created just for her. She stood in the observation deck one last time before leaving the Crimson Fang for her new assignment. Jacques stood beside her. He was now a full warrior, no longer a cub, but he still came to her for advice. "Are you sad to leave?" he asked. "Yes and no," Sarah said. "I will miss this ship. I will miss teaching here. But I am excited to share these practices with other species, to help others the way I helped you." "You did help us," Jacques agreed. "But we also helped you, yes? You were lonely when you arrived, isolated. Now you have friends, family even." Sarah smiled. "Yes, you helped me too." "Good," Jacques said. "That is how it should be. That is what you taught us, that helping each other makes everyone stronger." As Sarah's shuttle departed the Crimson Fang, she looked back at the massive ship. Inside, 300 warriors were starting their morning practice. They were moving through warrior pose, downward dog, tree pose, breathing deeply, finding balance, growing stronger. 8 curious cubs had watched a human stretch. Now those cubs were warriors and teachers. Now an entire species was learning that strength and flexibility could coexist. That power and peace were not opposites. Sarah smiled. Humanity had brought many things to the stars: technology, art, diplomacy. But perhaps the most valuable thing they brought was this: the understanding that taking care of yourself was not weakness, that healing was honorable, that the strongest warriors were those who knew themselves completely. One day, historians would talk about the great human contributions to the galactic community. They would mention technology sharing and cultural exchange programs. But Sarah hoped they would also mention this: the day predator cubs saw a human stretch, and everything changed.